So today we're going to talk about how to build psychologically safe and mentally healthy cultures, particularly during the turbulent times that we find ourselves in. I'm excited to be joined by Misty, James, and John for this panel. So let's let them introduce themselves. And if we could start with your role, company, and a brief description of what your company does. Misty, let's start with you.
Thank you, Matt. And hi, everyone. I am Misty Rallis, and I am the Global Director for our people care efforts at Kearney. And Kearney is a global management consulting firm. We have about 5,000 people across 4 regions, and I think over 40 countries now. And we serve the top companies and governments across the world. So really excited to be here and be a part of Kaleidoscope and be on this panel with my fellow panelists.
Thank you, Misty. James, you're looking as sharp as ever. Would you like to go next?
Thank you so much, Matt. Appreciate it. Thank you. My name is James Keshavarz. I am the Chief Wellness / Wellbeing Officer for Gibson, Dunn, and Crutcher. We are a global law firm, mostly, I think, known for our litigation. We're definitely one of the leaders in that space, but even more so, what attracted me to Gibson Dunn is its pro bono efforts that it does on an annual basis. So having that culture was very important to me when I was trying to make my pick of what company I was going to be a part of in this space of well-being.
Thank you, James. And last but certainly not least, just up the road from me in New York, John, would you like to say hello?
Hi, Matt. Hello, everyone. John Coyles, Vice President of Drug Health and Safety Programs at Major League Baseball. For those of you that may not be fans of baseball, we are one of the big 5 professional sports leagues in the United States, 30 major league teams spread throughout the US and Canada. We also oversee our rather significant minor league system, which involves over 5,000 players and 100 plus teams. And right up the road from Matt, we have our headquarters in New York City, which includes 1,000 individuals that work in a variety of responsibilities from finance to legal to instant replay. And we also have a number of satellite offices throughout the United States that manage different facets of our industry. In my role, I oversee everything related to health and safety. I've been at baseball for 15 years. That includes everything from traditional medical obligations and responsibilities to being the main liaison to our mental health clinicians, which allowed me the opportunity to get introduced to and begin a relationship with the Unmind team, including Matt and everyone else that has supported our program for the last few months. So really excited to participate in the panel today. And Matt, thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you, John. And yes, for those baseball fans and non-baseball fans, it's a particularly exciting time of the year as we head into postseason. And huge congratulations to Aaron Judge from our hometown Yankees yesterday, who hit that huge milestone of 62 home runs. Thank you for the introductions. I think it's really helpful for the audience to know kind of the context that you're coming from a role perspective. I think when we think about the challenges that we look to overcome in the workplace, they'll always be nuanced to individual companies, and they'll be dependent upon a whole host of factors. But what we do see are themes and trends across all companies, then by industries, and then even by locations. And we have a lovely mix on our panel today. But to help provide further context to the audience on the perspective that you are answering questions from, could you spend a couple of minutes outlining some of the challenges that you see specific to your workforces right now? John, we'll reverse the order and go back to you.
Sounds good. As I mentioned, I think the product that we deliver is the exciting play on the field. So the players, Aaron Judge and 1,199 others, provide the exciting product that we deliver to our fans on a daily basis. The challenge that we experienced over the last 2 or 3 seasons in particular, dealing with the pandemic, is the fact that in order for us to be successful, in order for us our product to be available, our players have to show up to work every day. They have to perform on the field, and our significant group of staff members, meaning the team staff members, but also the central baseball employees, they also need to be at work every single day. So we had to figure out a safe and an appropriate solution to manage the challenges that the pandemic presented to all of us, and make sure that we could show up to work, in a safe way on a daily basis with no break. But the other challenge that exists in baseball, not just throughout the pandemic, but at all times, for those that are fans of the game know this, there's not many days off in baseball. Our players play 162 games over 185 days. That's not many days off. That is, 7 days a week, running from February till November. So there's not much of an off season. That impacts weekends, that impacts evenings. Our games occur on the East Coast, West Coast. So you pretty much have to be on at all times. With respect to that, things like, stressful situations can occur at any time. The term burnout, can certainly apply when you're not, looking out for yourself, when you're not taking care of your well-being. So with respect to kind of our industry, it is something that, making sure that you're, looking out for your well-being is a necessity, because without that, we could lose good people, or we could, impact the product that we're looking to deliver.
Thanks, John. That's really interesting. I think a lot of people on the call will probably resonate with the relentless nature of what work feels like, irrespective of the field that they're in. And I think you mentioned the word burnout as well, which is certainly something that's very common, as we saw in Nick's opening keynote today. Thank you, John. James, what about yourself in the legal space?
That's a loaded question, isn't it, Matt? Well, and it's just a quick background. My background is in clinical and positive psychology, as well as emergency medicine before I came over to big law. So I'll answer the question in that sense. Much like John just mentioned, burnout, of course, is a major topic in all corporations, especially in big law right now, as well as imposter syndrome and different types of mental health, challenges. And why is that a conversation? And it's thanks to the American Bar Association, who created the Wellbeing Pledge with efforts such as Patrick Krill and Jonathan Bittner and the rest of that committee. So we're very thankful for that, because the biggest problem I think that we see in big law is the same problem anyone else sees. It's the 4 barriers to mental health: stigma, cost, time, and access. So here at Gibson Dunn, we had this amazing buy-in from our major stakeholders, which is, of course, the hardest thing to get at any company, where the executive committee and management committee were right behind us. And they were saying, yes, let's do everything that we possibly can to help. So that, of course, is a big deal. But all the same, when we have a situation where there's not enough access to care, it's hard. So right off the bat, we had elimination of copays for therapy, trying to make the access as easy as possible on the cost side. So we're able to try to break that barrier down. But then I was getting phone calls from my attorneys, my legal professionals, saying, I have an appointment booked 90 days out. So what can we do there? So what we did is we sat down as a team, we being myself and my amazing manager, Melissa De Carvalho, and we wrote down the 4 barriers to mental health: stigma, cost, access, and time. And we said, let's break down each one of these barriers and help with intrinsic motivation, burnout, imposter syndrome. So first thing we did was eliminate the cost with that elimination of the copay. That didn't work too well. So what we did is we looked into other premium services. That's the benefit of big law, right? Plenty of money to go around. So we actually were able to rebrand and get a platinum EAP that would guarantee care within 24 hours, which is amazing. The next aspect is the stigma aspect, right? So we have amazing leaders sitting at the top, Barbara Becker and Josh Lipschitz, who are diverse, which is a big part of who we are, and they were essentially getting rid of that stigma by saying, look, these are our benefits and we have this in place for you. Best practices about vacation, all of those different things to reduce that stigma, to make it a safe workspace. Of course, that's a big topic of today. And then access and time, right? That's a big part of it. So we teamed up with all sorts of partners to break down mental health into 3 dimensions: preventative, reactive, and crisis management. Now, on the reactive side, we teamed up with One Medical and Guide and Thrive, VHS, to have this care that would be completely cost-free, virtual, and time-conducive for our legal professionals. Now, of course, time being a big part of it, that's how Matt and I came to know each other. The bite-sized approach to Unmind has been very helpful for us with destigmatizing mental health, and also getting those much needed numbers of what our lay of the land is here at Gibson Dunn. So that was a long-winded answer to a question, but it was a big question.
It is a big question, and it was a brilliant answer. I wrote down a lot of things. I think I'm going to dive into the leader conversation that you mentioned there, the preventative. I think that 4-way stigma, cost, time, access will resonate across every participant, irrespective of industry. It's certainly something that we've seen across the US. But thank you, James. Misty, what about yourself? So slightly different industry, kind of similar.
Yeah, similar. I mean, I think, consulting is, I would say, a different kind of an animal, but similar to other professional services firms, as I'm sure, James, you can attest. What we're hearing from our colleagues, similar burnout. People have a sense of helplessness, a lack of control. There are still no boundaries. I know we're 2.5 years in from COVID, right? But people still feel like there are no boundaries. The hours that they're working are unsustainable, and work-life balance. They either cannot manage it very well, or there is none. So, I mean, consulting, like I said, it's unique, it's different, it's a high-performance culture. People are working hard, long hours. Our folks are traveling. I mean, we're talking on average 60 to 65-hour work weeks, and even more in some cases, depending upon the project or the phase of the project that you're in. And it's not surprising. Consultants know that there is an expectation, more so than your typical 9-to-5 job, right? But it's no longer sustainable. And I mean, and really it never was. But I think now that there's this light shining on mental health and well-being and self-care, people are starting to say to themselves, wait a minute, this isn't acceptable anymore. And we also have to consider that we have new generations coming through, right? And so we have, Gen Z, and their expectations and their priorities are different. So we have to do differently if we're going to attract this top talent, if we're going to retain talent, and if we're truly going to care for our people. So.
Thank you, Misty. I think you touched on some really interesting topics. Interesting use of the language around helplessness, lack of control, and no boundaries. I think that's something we can all connect with in our own personal experiences and that of the workplace. And then also you linked it, which I thought was quite interesting, to the retention and attraction and engagement of talent. And you go back 5 years, and connecting mental health to those topics, it was non-existent. But like you said, there is a new generation coming into the workforce that has a very different expectation. And James knows that we've been doing a lot of work within the law and legal industry recently, and that's a huge shift for an industry that has been very traditional for a long time. And I know we'll touch on that shortly. Thank you for that initial insight into the challenges. I think that provides us with a great foundation of where to go next for the next couple of topics. So the first topic that I want to focus on is around driving cultural change. So you would have heard Nick say it earlier on, you would have heard Gav talk about it as well. And right now, we're in a period of time where everyone is talking about workplace mental health. The fact that business leaders believe, and they've started to back it up with budget, more and more of our colleagues are sharing mental health challenges, and that's becoming the norm. And because COVID has fast-tracked the trend of companies offering access to personal well-being apps, the tools for support to support yourself are just a couple of taps away. And interestingly, a survey by our friends at Aon found that 96% of firms plan to maintain or increase their investment in mental health post-pandemic, which is wonderful. However, there's always a but in these kinds of statements. Gallup's recent State of the Workplace survey showed that there are now record rates of worry, anger, sadness, and stress, which are all huge elements of mental health. Around 7 in 10 employees admit that they are struggling, and 4 in 5 are either not engaged or are actively disengaged at work. So what's not working? Most recently, and this is a point you made, Misty, the focus has been purely on the individual. Help yourself, fix yourself. Here's an app for you, make yourself more resilient. And the responsibility has been on the individual. But that individual spends 50, 60, 70 plus, you said then, 60 to 65 hours a week in the environment that an organization creates for them. That's in person, virtual, or hybrid. And organizations have a responsibility to create environments that are psychologically safe and mentally healthy. And this includes empowering individuals to look after themselves, but it's also about empowering people to look after each other. Gav said it, Nick said it. You start with I, you move to we, and you move to all. At Unmind, we call this the whole organization approach. And that's what you got a snapshot into with Gav recently. And fortunately, we are joined by the 3 of you who are representing organizations that have already embraced the whole organization approach. So my first question for you all: what initiatives have you been working on from a whole organization perspective? And James, let's start with you.
And always a pleasure to hear you talk, Matt. You just really have a finger on the pulse of what's going on, and I appreciate that. And when it comes to this, this is the biggest goal of us over here at Gibson Dunn and the Wellbeing Committee. And what we have focused on heavily to start is mental health first aid. So just making sure that individuals who are in a position of leadership here at the firm understand the signs and symptoms of mental health distress. Now we go into a very deep dive. Melissa and I teach in mental health first aid classes too. We teach it internally with our leadership, and we will focus heavily on the early signs and symptoms of distress, and then the worsening signs, and then crisis, and what to do in each one of those different symptoms. It goes with that multi-dimensional 3-prong approach to mental health: preventative, reactive, and crisis. Because when we first came on board, a lot of individuals with high senses of empathy, but not knowing what to do with that empathy, were giving the wrong advice, right? And we don't want advice, we want direction. So, the intentions were there, but the tools weren't. So that's why we started doing this training. That was first and foremost very important to us for those who were already willing to act. And so they knew how to direct. Some people have, we have fight, flight, or freeze. I'm always okay with freeze, because those who freeze will pause and think, and then they'll just do what they need to do, which is direct someone. Much like in an emergency situation that might be physical, like a heart attack. You freeze, you take it all in, you realize I need to call 911, or I need to get an ambulance over to this individual and take care of them. Same concept with mental health first aid. But you don't know to have that sympathetic response unless you know what these signs and symptoms are. We don't want individuals to walk right past us that may have needed some of that direction. So that was step 1. Step 2 is empathy, emotional intelligence, and transformational leadership training. Now, this is at all levels. We do it at the partner level, we do it at the mid-level, associate, senior associate, as well as staff. And so we have the tools, right, to analyze the different types of distresses. That's important on that crisis management side. But now, how can we shift the culture, right? Active listening skills, understanding that when someone comes to you to talk about something, that was probably a really hard thing for them to do. It's not about what they say, it's about the person. This is the type of things that we teach, ways to show that you are listening, because when someone is in some form of distress, they might have some kind of cognitive hijacking or whatever it may be. They're only going to notice, because of negativity bias, being in that sympathetic response, the negative things that you do when you're trying to listen to them. So things like mirroring, we teach mirroring, we teach how to make that person feel safe from non-verbals, such as body language. So these are just some of the many things. We go through the 4 I's of transformational leadership. And of course, we can go on and on, but I'm going to go ahead and pause for now.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I took some notes and I'll summarize at the end of this topic, but so much good stuff in there. And it's amazing to hear the level of investment into training leaders and across all levels was the key thing that I heard from you there, but I'll come back to that. Misty, would you like to go next?
Sure. Yeah. So I think for us, we're at a point now where we really need to shift from addressing the symptoms to the root causes. And we can't keep trying to solve on Fridays the problems that we ourselves are creating for all of our employees Monday through Thursday. So when we started this journey about 2.5 years ago, we developed a charter, and it has objectives, commitments, a framework. And this framework is made up of 4 pillars. And we're doing a pretty good job, I would say, on the first 3 pillars, which are resources, awareness, support, and training. But it's this fourth pillar that is really challenging. It's the tough one. And we've really got to put more focus, energy, and investment on it. And that is prevention. Our colleagues are telling us they really appreciate the efforts that we've done thus far and the different initiatives. But they're also telling us that they want more. We've got to do more to address these root causes and not just the symptoms. And this is really the challenge because this is the hard stuff. This is the stuff that requires systemic change. And we're talking about things for us in the consulting industry, like how we sell projects, how we scope our projects, how we staff our projects. So these are things that have significant business and financial impact. The other thing we've got to look at and address is around leadership behaviors. And as we all know here on this call, most likely changing behaviors is not an easy task. Don't get me wrong, we have a lot of really good role models, great leaders who they get it. They understand the impact, they understand the importance, they're leading, as James was talking about, with empathy. They're creating safe spaces, they're modeling mentally healthy behaviors. And I would say typically those tend to be our more junior partners. But then we have some challenges with others, and perhaps they tend to be more of our more tenured partners. And they just have this attitude or approach, let's call it, that this is consulting. This is our industry. It is what it is. I had to earn my stripes, and so does everybody else. So, this is really the tough stuff that we've got to start addressing. We know it's going to take time, but we've really got to double down and get at these root causes.
It's so refreshing to hear that in terms of this is the hard stuff, so this is why we're going to do it. It would be so easy to say this is the hard stuff, so this is why we're not going to do it. So that's applaudable and very diplomatically put in terms of the tenured employees. I'm going to come back to there, but some key things you said, systemic change, huge, and tying that to business impact again is fantastic. So I'll cover that. But John, different industry. Are we seeing similar things, different trends? What about yourself?
I think the answer is yes and no on that, Matt. We really, in a lot of things that we do here at baseball, have to run down on parallel paths. You've got the athletes, right? A lot of what I'm responsible for is player facing or athlete facing. So being that liaison with the mental health clinicians that each of our teams are obligated to have, making sure that they understand their roles and responsibilities, working with the medical personnel, working with the mental skills professionals that are, helping them with the mental aspects of the game. We operate in a space with our player initiatives that mental health is directly linked with physical health. And we want to support that mental health to the extent possible, raising the bar with respect to the professionals that are working in this space and supplementing the traditional model of mental health clinician or even EAP with resources that can be tapped into and perhaps can be more proactive as opposed to reactive, as I believe Misty was saying. But for all of the player-facing initiatives that we have, we still have that traditional office setting that we now have an opportunity to support. You mentioned the whole organization. It's really interesting, given the link to our industry. Our commissioner, who became the CEO of our industry 7 years ago, his primary kind of initiative that he rolled out was something called One Baseball, where essentially the whole industry, the whole organization would be operating on that same path, all filtering up to kind of, the central leadership and having access to the same resources that the athletes and the team staffs would have. And I think there's a lot of similarities between what we were looking to accomplish for all things, not just mental health, but what, the operating procedures that Unmind is promoting, to potential clients or to initiatives as well. And, what we deal with in our office space is really not that dissimilar to what Misty and James are facing on a daily basis, because, may not be publicly known, but, we operate here that, our commissioner, our CEO and our deputy commissioner came from big law. They came from large law firms in Washington, D.C. and New York City. And really a lot of those experiences, being senior partners in those settings, our office really operates in the same way. And with respect to that, they also come with an HR or benefits background. So, we have in place, and we've had in place for many years, the traditional EAP model. We have rolled out mental health first aid. That's a very, very important initiative that we promote to all facets of our industry. But, with respect to creating the relationship with Unmind, we are looking to take that traditional model and supporting that model through new proactive resources that can make our office in New York City and our branch offices more of a modern workplace. But as our population gets younger, our office staff members, but also our players themselves, the delivery of mental health resources, they may receive it or want to receive it in a different way. And I think that that's where not taking the approach of replacing or even improving, but I really like the word supplement, because everyone is going to be wanting to access things a little bit differently. They're just as, people may really, like and Unmind is generally very well received in our industry. There may still be some people that want to, take an alternative way, or maybe want to kind of access things through a more traditional model. So, it is one where we are looking to make sure that every facet of our industry, every employee that has the benefit or the pleasure of working within professional baseball has access to these resources, and not just the players have, but anyone that is supporting the players or supporting our industry may have. And that is something that it works really, really well. But I'm very proud of the fact that we have support from our leadership, even at the highest level. I'm really, really excited about kind of what we've been able to accomplish to date, but also really excited about what we may be able to accomplish over the next, few months as we look to pull out of the pandemic. We're finishing one successful season that's been very exciting. We'll head into the off season, and we'll start preparing for the next season over the next couple of weeks.
Fantastic. Thank you. And thank you all for tackling that question. I think there was some incredible insights, and to summarize kind of what I heard, I think, James, you started off by talking about being in the fortunate position that you had a lot of leaders with high levels of empathy, but they didn't know what to do with it. I love that. And I think this feels like a Brené Brown comment. I think I heard it from her, but I heard compassion is empathy with action. And we talk at Unmind about creating compassionate leaders with the manager training and foundational training that we can provide. And I think that is about converting human empathy into action within a workplace setting of how to support others. I think the way that you train in terms of transformational leadership training is incredible and huge. And I'm sure people would want to find out more about that. Misty, symptoms to root cause. It's a fantastic transition, and obviously the way that we think about things as well, and the fact that prevention is one of the hardest things to focus on, but your people want more and you're willing to support that is huge. As well as the systemic change, I think I'll use that. We can't solve on Friday the problems that we create Monday through Thursday for our people. It needs to be a whole week, whole organization kind of thing. You talked about Generation Z as well, or Z as I would say. And John, you talked about that as well, right? Acknowledgement of the changing landscape in terms of the workforce. And I think acknowledging diversity, even in one baseball, right, is very, very important to have the level of resources available and the variety within that. And supplementing the traditional. I think that talks to an evolving world, and it talks to continually evolving what we do and how we provide things. And it's not that something all of a sudden doesn't work, it just might not be as effective, and therefore it needs to evolve and be supplemented to, and eventually that creates wide-scale change. I'm going to move us on to topic 2. We're not that far away from time. I do wish that we had more than 45 minutes, but appreciate that we're taking up a lot of time of people's days, and especially yours. One key theme across everything you just said was leadership. And you all touched on the focus on leadership and how important they are to driving meaningful cultural change. So I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into your relationships with your leadership and how that's helped you or perhaps hindered you. So if we spend a couple of minutes each on that, Misty, let's start with you and Kearney, sorry. So what's your relationship like with your leaders, and how do you continue to get buy-in from them? Because I know you do so much.
Yeah, and I would say we are very, very lucky. We're fortunate to have leadership support, and we've had it from the get-go. Our CHRO, Stephen Parker, he's my boss, has been a champion from the start. He gets it, he understands it, and he's been driving it with our leadership team. We also have the support from our managing partner and all of our regional chairs as well. So again, we're very, very fortunate, because I know other companies may not have that luxury. We actually have this pyramid illustration that we've used with them, and we use it with others as well. It has mental health at the base as the foundation, and it just kind of depicts the connection with everything. So mental health is at the bottom, and mental health is critical to having overall well-being. And when you have overall well-being, that leads to increased employee engagement. And when your employees are engaged, hopefully then they're able to bring their whole selves to work. And if you can do that, ultimately you have employees who are thriving and hopefully finding joy at work as well. And yes, this is the right thing to do. Probably all of us on this call know this is the human thing to do, but it is also the essential thing to do from a business perspective, because it has direct impact on your business and your bottom line. When you have employees who are thriving and engaged, you are going to have increased performance, increased productivity. You're going to have more creativity and innovation, and you're going to have increased loyalty and retention. So, it's just the right thing to do for business. There's one quick example I do want to give of how our leadership has supported us, and it's through our People Care Jam, which we rolled out last year. And the jam was a week-long open forum virtually, where we got our colleagues together globally to co-create ideas on how to build a mentally healthy workplace and foster a culture of well-being. And we had over half of our colleagues join in, over 300 ideas. I could go on and on and on, but my point is that we had leadership buy-in and support from the get-go. From resources, we invested in an innovation platform to run this thing globally. They allowed us to have consultants staffed on this as an internal project. We also had their support in building excitement, energy, momentum, and promoting the event. And then last but not least, and probably most importantly, we had their commitment ahead of time that they were going to act. So we went through all of this, we got all these ideas, and they were committed that they were going to take action and agree to moving forward with some of these ideas that came out of the jam. So again, we're very fortunate that we do have leadership engagement and support and understanding of how this is important, and it all directly impacts really the bottom line. So
I really appreciate that you acknowledge multiple times how fortunate you are to have leadership like that. I think there are people listening that will think, well, my leader's never going to do that, or it must take ages to do that. That's the hard thing, right? It's another hard thing. It doesn't mean that it's not worth doing, but in providing those examples, so much good stuff. And I'll come back to some of my favorites across them in a short while. James, I'm coming to you next. And we talked before the panel, and you gave me permission to use one of my favorite phrases that I've learned in working with law. And I'm going to caveat this, that this is a personal opinion and it doesn't account for every single law firm, and there is a change in this industry. However, there is the common belief that a lot of change doesn't happen in law because there is a pale, stale male layer at the top of law firms. Prove me wrong, James. What's your relationship like with leadership?
Well, for one, our managing partner is a woman, and she is the former chair of our diversity committee. So you could imagine that there's been some amazing systemic change that's happened at Gibson Dunn. And you know, even before she took over as managing partner, our chief diversity officer has really had paved the way for our department, the Wellbeing department, well before we were even a thought. So with that said, you know, when I was looking at different law firms and different companies to start working in this space, it was an easy decision to go to Gibson Dunn because of all the work in diversity in particular. If you saw a photo of our executive committee, you would feel, you know, what diversity and leadership should look like, and you would see just walking through the halls or just spending time with our firm what it can do as well. And with that said, I think that plays a big role. There's a lot that goes into stakeholder buy-in, and that was the initial first year for me in this position, was getting to know all the leaders within the firm so that we know each other. So they know to reach out to me if there is a crisis. They know to reach out to me if there's some type of programming that they would want. So in the beginning, it's marketing. And then over time, it becomes very reactive or proactive to reactive, if you will. So it's gotten to a point now where I'm very happy to say that leaders in entire offices, partners in charge, will reach out to me and say, hey, I would like to do a presentation on imposter syndrome during an all-associate lunch. Can you come and do that? And I say, absolutely. When you have that type of buy-in, it makes it safe for individuals to show up. So when a partner in charge or a major leader in the firm sends out that invite rather than me, we see a significant increase in participation, not just being there, but also feeling safe to participate in the event as well. We covered this in the spring ABA CoLAP event, the importance of covering the hard topics of mental health as well as the soft topics. And that was our big shift to Unmind, where we were able to have an app that has training on anxiety, on depression, on burnout, rather than just having the other soft topics. They're very important. They're very important. As a positive psychologist, I can't say that those aren't important. But this is how you create a safe workspace, right? Where an individual feels comfortable going to these different types of events. So for that, we're very thankful for Unmind to help us with the destigmatization. So in a nutshell, I couldn't be happier with leadership support. My leaders push me rather than just give me a pat on the back and say, oh, that's cute, you're here doing, you know, the wellness thing, you know, or, oh yeah, you're doing that wellness, you know, stuff. No, they say, thank you so much for the work that you're doing, creating a psychological safe workspace. Can you please come out and do a presentation on anxiety? Like, this is huge. And this is why my intrinsic motivation has never been higher.
I love that. And thank you again so much. I think the big statement for me is that's a wonderful example of diversity at the top and the positive impact it can have on any business, and all businesses should be as diverse as possible. John, what about yourself? What about leadership at MLB?
Well, as previously mentioned, Matt, you know, we're really fortunate here at baseball that we've had support for this initiative, but for, you know, individualized, you know, kind of employees as well, support all the way from the top. You know, both our commissioner, our deputy commissioner, and our C-suite, our chiefs, through their actions, through their words, it's very clear to me as someone who's leading this mental health initiative, but also as an employee of the company, that they are, you know, it is a priority to have a inclusive, a safe, a healthy, a supportive environment for our employees to come to work to every day. And that's a really good feeling as an employee. Not only are we kind of involved in rolling out these different projects, these different initiatives, but we're the recipients of it as well. And, I think that that's something where I'm very proud of what we've accomplished, but I'm also very impressed by the leadership and kind of how they've taken this issue and been very supportive of the recommendations that we've made. But, look, they all are also, as Misty said, they are also good business people. They're very bright, they're very sophisticated, and they realize that by creating that type of environment, you're going to retain good people, you're not going to lose people, and you're going to attract kind of new employees to baseball at a time where priorities of particularly younger employees may be different than it was 3 or 4 years ago. But putting that kind of traditional office model aside, the other unique nature of baseball is the way that we are structured. And Matt, this, but there is a really compelling story that we've experienced recently. The kind of the board of governors in our industry is the owners, the billionaire owners of the different Major League Baseball teams. They direct the industry. They are the final decision makers on certain spends, certain initiatives. They are really the bosses of our leadership. It was really encouraging and impressive to me that they meet quarterly, and on their agenda at a time where they are typically talking about revenues and ways to grow the game. Mental health and mental health support is a topic that is on that agenda, and the communicator of that topic to that group is an individual by the name of Billy Bean. Billy is a close friend of mine. He's a colleague. He's involved with our initiatives as well. He's also a former baseball player and a very good one at that. And he's got a very compelling personal story that he has delivered to the ownership group, to our leadership. And he's been kind of the communicator of our overall mental health initiative, where his personal story is that if these resources had been made available, like Unmind, if they had been available at a time when he was a baseball player, his career may have been extended. He may have remained in baseball, and he may have been able to avoid some of the disruptions that he unfortunately had to go through as he was dealing with personal struggles and relationship issues and other things that all of us face. And it's one where when you combine the former player aspect of his career, when you combine that with the compelling nature of his personal story and the fact that he has the eyes and ears of the decision makers on our end, he is essentially a direct report to our commissioner and a special advisor where, if we need to, get a recommendation or an initiative on the decision makers' plates, Billy is the one that can do that. And it's one where, we have really kind of relied on that, personal story to try to grow, our recommendations and really, put a face to what we're looking to accomplish. And that has worked out very, very well.
I love that story, and I had the privilege of presenting alongside Billy, and can echo the sentiment. He's just a fantastic and wonderful human being, and a huge advocate for mental health. I'm going to call an audible, and we're going to draw time on the session today. I'm also probably going to irritate our brand and content team, and I'm going to suggest that the four of us get back together and record a short video that covers the obstacles that you had to overcome, because I think what you've all demonstrated is the wonderful things that you've done, but I would love to know a little bit more about what you had to overcome to achieve what you have achieved. And I think that might make for a nice marketing video that we can put together. So we'll come back to you on that, and hopefully we could do it all in person as well. We'll get everyone into New York. But on that last question, thank you so much. I wrote down a few things. I think Misty, I know Stephen as well. He's a fellow Brit that lives in New Jersey, so we have a lot in common there. That pyramid sounds fantastic, with mental health to well-being to engagement to thriving, and then linking that to business outcomes and demonstrating that it's so much more than just doing the right thing is huge. And I think if any and every company can find what their pyramid is to ingrain that within leadership and everything that they think, that's an incredibly powerful step. James, again, we talked about diversity at the top and stakeholder buy-in. It took you a year. Man, this isn't easy. It takes time. It's hard, and it takes effort, and kudos to you for doing that. And I think when folks maybe think about giving up in trying to persuade leadership to think differently, they should think back to you spending a year and considering yourself as a marketing person to get the message out there. And then priority from the top, John, all the way through. I think that's huge. The example of Billy standing up and, as well as being a business person, leveraging his platform to communicate with the people in power so that it can become a priority to create that psychologically safe workplace. So I am on a very strict timeline, and it goes minute by minute, and we've just ticked into the next session. So John, James, Misty, thank you so much for giving us your time today. That was truly fantastic.